I'm Hasina. I'm the Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion here at Peabody College, and we are really excited to have Professor Nicole Joseph with us today. Before we begin, I just want to note that we are recording this session and that Dr. Joseph wants this to be an interactive discussion. So just, you're welcome to use the chat, but please feel free to just
you
jump
cannot
in.
record this because you know I'm gonna be cussing now. This is a real conversation.
We can promise not to post it if you don't want it posted. So we'll see how it goes today and then let you decide. Is that fair? Okay, that's good. And to facilitate this discussion, we just want to have everybody introduce themselves. And so, Nicole, do you want to start and just get us going?
Yeah, sure. Nicole Joseph. I'm in DTL, Department of Teaching and Learning. This is my 4th year at Vanderbilt. I put my tenure materials in this year, like during COVID, y'all. I think it was May that I submitted my tenure materials. So whoever you pray to or think, just call my name, okay? You guys, some of you know that I was a teacher, a math teacher for 12 years and an instructional math coach in Seattle and Federal Way. I'm born and raised in Seattle. And I'm just excited that, Hasina, that you're doing these FaceTime things with the faculty, because it gives us a chance to see each other and connect, because it has been hard. Interestingly enough, it's like you want to see people, but when we were seeing people, we were like, I want to be at home. Now it's like we're dying to connect. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for being here. And I think definitely that was something that students have repeatedly told our office, is they want a chance to talk to faculty and just be able to have conversation. And so I'm looking forward to this. Addison, would you like to introduce yourself?
There we go. Can you hear me? I just graduated from undergrad Peabody with a degree in elementary education, and then I'm going into the reading education master's this coming year.
Congratulations. Wow. Bernarda?
Hi, I am Bernarda. I go by Bernie, and I'm from Ecuador. I'm an incoming international student, and I'm into the Masters for Special Education, so severe disabilities track.
Welcome.
I'm hoping to get there.
Well, we're pulling for you. It is a tough time, definitely, for our international students. So yeah, if we can support, let us know. Bethany?
Hi, I'm Bethany Daniel, and I'm getting ready to start my 2nd year in the doc program.
Welcome. Deborah?
Hi, I'm Deborah. I'm an undergrad, and I'm going to be a rising sophomore studying secondary ed and math.
Awesome. Grace?
Hi, I'm Grace, and I'm starting my 6th year in the PhD program.
Hi, Grace. Janessa?
Hi, everyone. I'm Janessa. I am a 2nd year EDD student, and I'm also a full-time staff member at admissions. So if I go offline, I am currently moderating an info session, so I apologize in advance.
Well, thank you for making time for us, Janessa. Jocelyn? So Jocelyn, we're going to come back. If you want to raise your hand if you're here, I'd be happy to come back to you. Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm going into my 2nd year in the psych PhD program in Peabody. Yeah.
Thank you. Lauren?
Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm in my 3rd year in the EDD program, so very close to the end. I got my undergrad and my master's both from Peabody as well in education.
Welcome. Marion?
Hi, I'm Marion. I'm in my 2nd year of the International Ed Policy and Management program, so IEPM. Sorry, I'm looking rough. Wasn't quite ready for video today, but I did my undergrad at UNC in psychology. So yeah, nice to be here.
Good to see you. Maya?
Hi, I'm Maya. I am an undergrad. I'm a rising junior studying secondary ed and math.
Thank you for coming. Nadav?
Sorry.
Here we are. Okay.
Are we introducing ourselves?
Yes.
I assume?
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm Nadav. I'm starting my 4th year in the Department of Teaching and Learning, my PhD.
Thank you for coming.
Hi. I'm really happy to join you.
Thank you. So we have a couple of Nicoles here. Nicole Joseph?
Yeah, you said it right. Hi, I'm Nicole. I'm a second year, going into my second year in the International Educational Policy and Management Master's Program, and I'm a former math teacher, so really excited to be here and talk about STEM.
Thank you. And Nicole Torres.
I'm so excited to see so many Nicoles. This is awesome. And that it's also spelled without the H. No offense to H Nicoles. I just started the 1-year MED program and for secondary ed. Yes. And my content area is mathematics. I'm a career changer, and this is my first month at Vanderbilt. I'm excited to be here.
Well, welcome. And Olivia.
Hi, everybody. I'm Olivia Bailey, and I'm in the MEd ELL program. So that's English Language Learners, and the fall will be the start of my 2nd year. And I came to Peabody after coming back from teaching at international universities. So I'm very excited to be doing this again. It's nice to be on the student side.
Thank you for being here. Rachel.
Is that me, Rachel Sigmund?
Oh, there's two already. Rachel's two now. Yes, please go.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Hi. I'm Rachel Sigmund. I'm coming into Peabody in the fall, moving from California for a PhD in teaching and learning and diversity with an emphasis in language literacy and culture, working with Emily Phillips Galloway. And my master's is in international comparative education. My undergrad is in education, K-12, and I just finished my last week of teaching high schoolers last week. So,
well, congratulations.
Oh, sorry, I thought the video was on.
Rachel Ernest. I don't. We will come back. Samantha?
Hi, I'm Sammy. I am a 5th year PhD student in the Department of Teaching and Learning.
Welcome. 7?
Hi, I am visiting assistant professor at the Department of Teaching and Learning.
Good to see you. Taylor?
Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor Kellogg. I feel like a lot of you all may know me now. I am the graduate assistant for the Peabody Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And yeah, we're happy to have you all. This will be super exciting.
Thank you. Tejan?
Hi, I'm Tessely. I'm about to start my 1st year of the Learning, Teaching, and Diversity program.
Welcome. And Yakai?
Oh, I'm an online HTC program student in my 2nd semester.
And I did go through this kind of alphabetically, and I think a couple of people might have jumped in between. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, my name is Bethany Gardner. I use she, her, and they, them. I'm a rising 3rd year in psychology studying language.
Thanks, Bethany.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Ellis. I am a 2nd year in the MPP program. I'm excited about this. I'm really passionate about the educational experiences of Black girls.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Is there anybody we haven't
Yeah, I didn't go. I'm a fourth Nicole.
Oh.
It's all good. I'm Nicole Culver. I guess I'm Nicole C. I am a rising undergraduate senior. I am studying elementary education and second language studies, which is like the ELL undergrad double major that they have. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm just going to pause a moment. Is there anybody else that we didn't get? Okay. Thank you. And now we turn it over to Professor Nicole Joseph. And I have a kind of question to start with. We did get several questions in our online, but I think with kind of
let's start with the most provocative question.
The most provocative question. I think there was a great question about how other students, faculty, staff of color can, the impacts of the Black Lives Movement on non-Black racial groups and how to navigate kind of some of the conversations that are happening. And so I would love to kind of hear your thoughts about what you feel are kind of the similarities and differences in the ways in which people are navigating this discussion.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand. Are you asking me about
And maybe I should read this. I'm paraphrasing, so I'm
okay.
going to, as an international student from Asia, I was wondering what you think about the impacts of the BLM movement on non-Black racial minority groups. Are those impacts similar or different from our Black community?
So when you say our Black community, do you mean like an international Black community? Is that what they're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So first of all, let me say that the Black Lives Movement, I would strongly encourage you all to, go to their website, read deeply what they, their mission, their goal. They are extremely, in my opinion, inclusive. But we do know that race can operate differently in an international context. So I have a colleague at TSU, for example, that studies Caribbean Black girls and has lots of empirical data of Caribbean Black girls essentially distancing themselves from multi-generational Black girls and have said, pretty awful things like, I'm not that Black girl, that's not my history, don't ghettoize me, just really being pretty explicit about, their own sort of experience. And so that's still anti-Blackness, right? So I think it's important for people to understand what exactly is anti-Blackness like here in these United States. I mean, I think this is what the context of the Black Lives Matter movement, and really understanding how, these issues can look differently. I'm not saying they are, but they can look differently, particularly in other countries that are majority Black. I think if you're talking about European countries, Canada, the Netherlands, Black, the darker skinned people probably do experience life differently than, the majority of those folks. But I think it's important to educate yourself. You got to do your due diligence. Try not to make generalizations about these issues without really understanding them deeply. That's what I would say. That's one way to navigate it, is know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And everybody, please feel free to jump in, but I think a question, Sho Cravens, who is the Associate Dean for International Students, and I were also talking about, how can international students really connect with this conversation? I mean, not beyond what is it? I think coming from an international context to the U.S. to understand the U.S. context, what are the pieces that they really need to understand and focus on?
They need to understand the history. They need to understand the history of Black people in the United States, starting from slavery on up, right? To really understand the ways in which structurally this country was built, first of all, on the backs of African American people. But I think secondly, to understand everything that we see from our economic system, the educational system, like those things were intentionally designed. Some scholars would argue that no, the system is not broken, actually. It's working the way that it was specifically designed to be, right? So to me, international students need to really understand the deep historical, social, political context of these, United States of America, and understand Black people's, experience here from day one. Because that we don't, where do you learn that really? Like you learn partial stories in these, social studies textbooks. And if you're coming as an international student, as a grown person, I'm sure you didn't learn that in your home country. So you've got to do some due diligence and do some research and do some reading, and do a lot of listening, right, to African American people's experiences, and try to develop a level of empathy for connecting or trying to build solidarity around these issues. Because if you just listen to the news and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, you're not going to get a full story. You're going to get like a partial discourse, which generally is always wrong or super problematic. That was a good question. What's that? What else y'all got? Come on, let's talk.
I'd actually love to hear some of that. We have quite a few international students on this call, so I'd love to kind of hear some perspectives from the student side.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, do we need to set norms? Listen, you need to understand that this is a learning space. Like I operate from a learning space. So there are no right and wrong answers. We're trying to gain understanding and better understand. So if you have fear, don't be scared. Just say it, because we're trying to figure this out together. If it was easy, we probably wouldn't be here, right?
So I have a question then about teaching in the international context, because I was teaching in East Asia at a higher education level, and we used to do something where you could just ask a cultural question about the United States, and these would be anonymous so that students could feel that they could ask it and then have it answered. Which was, they would ask things that they would want to know about, like, why is there racism in America? Like, what is the KKK? These are the questions that we were getting. And I'm like, okay, how do I answer this in a way that is appropriate, isn't going to get me fired, so I don't lose my job, because this is a country that had censorship, was not necessarily maybe open to some of these conversations, and had, like you mentioned, a very different view of what racism looked like within their own country and culture, and within various skin tones within that. So it was a very complex way to approach the topic, and I never knew exactly if I was doing it right, because there's only so much you can do of providing resources if they're not always accessible to those students. So if you were in that situation where you have to balance there's a certain level of observation being done of your teaching all the time, but these are the questions that are being asked, and you've been told you can answer these, you can approach these topics. It's because they wanted these students to study internationally in the United States. How would you approach dealing with those kinds of conversations in a way that is authentic and honest?
Well, I don't know what country that you are specifically talking about, but I do wonder about, I like to put stuff back on folks to like ask them questions. So I might say something like, well, can you tell me a little bit about what you already know about this question that you're asking me? Okay. And then they're going to, you know, say a little something, something. And then I'm going to say, can you tell me a little bit about where you got that information? How did you go about, you know, learning or coming to this type of conclusion, right? And I would say, just like anything in the world, there's always my side, their side, and, you know, people say the truth, right? So there's always multiple perspectives and multiple views of any idea. So I would invite students to just explore. So, you know, let's make it a little mini research project. You know, let's start, you know, Googling and seeing who we can, Google Scholar, whatever, who we can find that can help us better understand, you know, the origin of racism in the United States. Where does it come from? And let the student actually discover it on their own. I mean, and that's just good pedagogical strategy, right? You're not telling them they're wrong. You're not telling them they're right. You're saying, let's make it into a project and let's think together about it. And then we could have like a further conversation once, you know, the student has gotten a little bit more information and go from there. This is the thing. I tell people all the time, you know, you have to make you have to make racism and, you know, white supremacy and anti-Blackness, you have to raise it to a level of scholarly inquiry and wipe away, in a sense, like the emotion, because people are not going to listen always to the emotion. It depends on your audience, right? So, you know, if there's a whole body of literature just around what like whiteness is, a whole body of literature. There's a whole body of literature around what is racism, right? So it's important to read. And I put some documentaries in there because, you know, since all of the racial unjust, there's been a lot more, you know, people been going back looking at some of these documentaries. And I'm telling you, James Baldwin will get you right. He was like way before his time. He lived internationally. So he has experiences from an international, I think it was France, Germany, it was somewhere that he lived, as well as in the United States. And so, oh yeah, I love The Warmth of Other Suns. I haven't finished it. But yeah, so I mean, that's what I would do. I would make it into an inquiry project. And you ain't gonna get fired for that.
That's good, thank you.
I'm curious from a school counseling perspective, from your experience, what would you say about what contributes to this kind of sense of safety that African American students experience in a school setting? What might contribute to the establishment of safety? What might contribute to decrease that sense of safety?
So when you say safety, what exactly do you mean?
Yeah, I think that kind of unfolds into kind of a physical safety as well as kind of a mental safety, and then I guess it can further unfold into a perceived sense of safety and like actual safety.
So I remember, you know, when I first went to my teaching certification, so, you know, I just now, maybe I think it was 2017, I let my teaching certification lapse. But I still had my K-12 teaching certification. But I remember when I was teaching or, you know, learning how to teach, I quickly learned the strategy of bringing my students into the conversation. I was teaching in a private school and getting my certification at the same time. So I didn't have all of this, language around student voice. Like, I didn't have any of that. But I knew in my mind that, wow, maybe I should be asking the students, like, what do you need, or what's helpful for you? So that's like, it just fascinates me how teachers never really do that. So if I were a counselor, a school counselor, I might do some focus groups with their families and the kids, and we're gonna sit down and just have a real conversation. Listen, you've been in this school since kindergarten, you're in 4th grade. It's obvious to everybody that this is a school where, you see these, what you call them, people? Community resource officers in our school. You see some medical detectives in our school. Let's have a conversation about this. What do you all need in order to feel safe in this school, right? You got the families there and you got the kids there, right? And just ask, and listen. What are they saying that they need? And then of course, you can, build from there. But it just fascinates me that people don't think to do that. And if you had, multiple focus groups across the year to engage like a research project, you would get, lots of empirical data around what safety might look like for African American students, both physical safety and this notion of emotional safety, I think is what you said.
I think just going off of that, I think I would like to ask you about the history of education. I'm really interested. I remember having a class in my undergraduate. I lived in Chicago, and it was like very specific to the city history, and how redlining and other different policies made this differentiation between neighborhoods and school systems, and how some schools were like better funded, and then you saw like exams and standardized tests and results, and how kids were just like placed in the schools and they were at a disadvantage from the get-go just because they had to go to a specific school and the neighborhood schools and all that. And I was just skimming through one of the books from this class, and I think that I'd like to either find another book or get into research, but I don't think I have, the specific terms to look for that. So I guess my question goes around how I can continue to learn about how the history of education links to racism in the history of racism in the US. Do you have any research for that, or just like how should I start?
So again, yeah, that's like so what I'm gonna do for you is I'm gonna need you to email me later, because I have several good colleagues that are historians that teach classes called the history of schooling in the United States. And they have syllabi and these are critical scholars, so they're going to connect it to segregation, to racism, to redlining, to like all of those things, and you can just start and read what's on their syllabus. Oh yeah, and Dr. Loss probably would also have some really good resources. Yep, Dr. Loss is wonderful. I was on her faculty FaceTime I don't know if it was last week or week before, but anyway. That would be definitely one way to start reading about that, is to look at these books and articles that are on the syllabus, because there's definite connections to schooling and redlining and school choice and all of those things. But I think one little caveat that I would say is that the literature, a lot of the literature has positioned Black children as being disadvantaged in particular schools that, on the surface are, well, let's not say on the surface, they are low resource. If you ain't got no books, if you don't have like psychologists or whoever you need, a sit team group of people, that's a clear evidence of you're low resourced, right? But language matters. So to say that they're disadvantaged could be quite problematic, because that language of disadvantaged is like rooted in historical understandings around intelligence. And you got to read the Coleman report from 1963, 1964, 5, whatever the year was. But James Coleman, did this big, massive empirical study, basically suggesting that, well, Black folks are, they're disadvantaged, culturally disadvantaged, whatever, and they really need to be in better proximity to white folks, right? And they need this and they need that. So just as you're reading, just try to think also about, this is perceived disadvantaged by the ways in which, these scholars have constructed the narrative. Because if you want to read that, sort of juxtaposed with somebody like Vanessa Siddle Walker or James Anderson, these are Black historians that have truly changed the narrative around segregated education and Black students' experiences in those educations. So this is like historical stuff, right? That has really kind of challenged and changed the narrative. So just a little, caveat to remember, so that you don't get caught up in, calling Black kids disadvantaged because they go to a school that don't have no money, right?
Yeah. And it's not inherent.
That's right. And, I would say the schools that I taught didn't have like a lot of resources. But let me tell you something, when you got committed teachers, this is how I became, I think, a very good teacher, is I began to collaborate with the other teachers. My principal, you guys, was a speech therapist. Her ass had never been in a classroom before, but she was my principal. So how in the hell are you going to help me get better as a teacher, and you ain't never been in a classroom? Like, how did you even get this job, right? And this was a Black woman, okay? So that's even more indictment from my perspective. But anyway, me and the other teachers, we started meeting on our own. We didn't have to have a meeting, what do you call it? A professional development day and all that. We just started meeting together, and we started using the kids' work, and we just started talking about, what do they get? What do we get? What do we have to do? How can we work together? And I'm telling you, this was before my master's degree. So this was before all the language, culturally responsive, like before all of that, because I think that teaching is something that you have to have like innate. Well, I'm not going to say it's innate, but it is sort of like an X factor that's very difficult, I think, to teach someone to do. Because I can teach you about wonderful, beautiful pedagogy. I can teach you how to design, lessons that are aligned to Common Core state standards. I can teach you how to do amazing launches and, exit tickets and all of those things, but you can still have inequities happening in your classroom. You can still have Black children that feel like they're not cared for in your classroom, right? So there's other pieces that are really important, and as simple as it sounds, relationships really are like the foundation. And you have to love kids, Black kids, like, you know what I'm saying? You have to care about them. Some scholars say you don't have to love Black kids, but you have to like respect them, or whatever. But, I feel like if you don't want to have a deep understanding of Black children, and for me, Black girlhood and really who they are, then it's okay to find another profession. Like, we're not going to be mad. In fact, we're going to love you for making that choice, because you see that teaching is just not for you. So I'm going to stop talking and let somebody else jump in.
I just pull out two things from the chat. A question's asked about the names of the two Black historians.
James Anderson, he's at Illinois, Chicago, I think. And Vanessa Siddle Walker is at Emory.
Vanessa
Siddle SIDDLE-Walker. She was the AERA president this past year.
Thank you. And then another question from the chat was, what do you think about Harvard dropping the ACT, SAT, and your thoughts about standardized testing and the effect of standardized testing?
Yeah, it's like there's a big body of research already that says that, standardized testing, such as, GRE, ACT, all that stuff, that it doesn't tell you anything. It's not going to tell you how someone is going to perform in a graduate program or, even in undergraduate, right? But why we have them, because they're efficient. You can, weed out people, if they're not within a certain bracket, right? And that is by design, right? And so, my perspective is that these assessments are bogus. I also am a pragmatist. I know that shit ain't going nowhere, right? Structurally, you'll have you have a couple schools they're not going to be bothered with it, but for the most part, them SATs and they're just not going anywhere. So what do? That's not my fight. I don't get in that lane at all. I just try to say, listen, how can we support Black girls or whoever to better understand this, this exam, and how do we help them ensure that they get what they need. At the same time, we need to be having conversations about how do we help them to become critically conscious of this system that uses these exams to, weed out people. Like they have to, Paulo Freire said, you got to understand the context. You got to understand the oppression, that people who are oppressed have to understand their own oppression. So then they can do something about it, right? And so I'm saying both things have to happen, right? And then you help Black children navigate a system that was never designed for them to be successful, right? But they're doing it kind of on their own terms, if that makes sense. So their humanities and their identities can be in full place, and they're making strategic choices about a raggedy system, if you will, but understanding that this capitalistic country and system, and that they have to, they have to play the game, and I think it was Rochelle Gutierrez that says, you have to, what does she say? Let me see, Grace or Nadav, y'all know that saying about playing the game?
Maybe playing the game and changing the game.
Right. You have to play the game in order to change the game. So you have to understand, the system. You have to definitely understand the system, and then you can be creative in your insubordination of how you navigate that system. But most people don't really even understand the system. And that's why, it can be difficult, I think, for Black students to, figure this stuff out. They're not, a lot of them are not legacy kids, they didn't have, not everybody, but I'm saying a lot of, Black students, they're not like legacy kids. So they don't have, 14 generations of attorneys, right, in their family to be able to, understand and navigate how to, college applications or whatever.
Right. And I think Nicole had a similar question about early university weed out courses. How can freshman, sophomore math and science courses support access and equity and also maintain rigor needed to pursue a STEM career?
Well, now, rigor is a bad word, Nicole. Jay.
It's not the best worded question, but I felt a lot of pressures myself in these early classes, and I didn't feel like I had a voice to speak up. And I'm just curious on your perspectives on, once you're in a university environment, how to kind of encourage voice and involvement in those math and science courses that also have a lot of, I guess, content to cover is more the word.
Yeah, again, it's like the system, right? Some white man wrote many, 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 many moons ago what Calc 3, what the content would be in Calc 3, right? And when you do what and, how you do what. So again, I tell people straight up that I do try to operate within our system, while also trying to reimagine, other things. So to me, the math faculty, y'all know those math faculty are something else, right? Like they're normally not interested in these kinds of things because they are trained through their own PhD program around content. They are never trained around pedagogy for that matter, nor are they trained around the ways in which mathematics has played a role in exclusion and right. That's not what they do. So, there's strength in numbers. How do we get the students to begin to form, coalitions or affinity groups or what I call counter spaces where they can come together to start, engaging in some of these, issues and conversations while they're also, getting them funky math assignments done, right? So like, how can both things sort of happen? I mean, I can't wait for the faculty to do it, math faculty to do it. They're just never going to. We have some, like the Alliance, the Math Alliance, that's a really good group. They're not perfect, but they have tried to, first of all, name a thing, right? In the math departments in a couple different of these institutions, naming the racism, like that's just, woo, you get a star for just doing that, right? But then also thinking about how do we better support, students that, struggle or whatever. And then also how do we as a faculty try to change some of those things? And one of the ways they've done that is they've gotten NSF money to bring faculty from like Hispanic serving institutions, HBCUs, and white institutions. These are mathematicians, not math educators, mathematicians coming together to try to think through these things. And it's called the Math Alliance, if you want to look them up.
Do you think this is a moment to like push for change given the focus on the Black Lives Movement right now?
Yes. I mean, it's, racial unrest and just the outcry of the structural oppression that is just like, folks are just weighted down. At the same time, we can begin to reimagine. We can begin to innovate. And, you have a lot of people, a lot of white people, a lot of people in power that are like opening up their ears a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I mean, maybe they're not, fully in the room, but they're opening up their ears a little bit. So how do we take advantage of, or I'll say leverage, this moment? Like, how do we do that? I have had multiple invitations to, have some of these conversations. I'm going to be going to ASU. There's like this big teacher thing. Some of you guys might have heard of it. They're doing a whole thing around Bettina Love, Hasina. Like Bettina Love is going to be a speaker. Okay, Marianne is like going, yay. And so they've invited me and Luis to essentially do what you had us do, but on like a larger platform. Yeah, I will find the link and just DM me or email me and I'll find the link. But yeah, so this is a moment, Hasina. People are wanting to have these conversations. And so a lot of folks have to kind of get past like, well, shit, we've been telling you this for 5,000 years and you ain't listened, right? So some people are caught up in that, right? And I'm like, we got to push past that and let's leverage it, right? And get some things done, hopefully, that's going to support, these communities.
I think we have a couple of questions in the chat. The first one is kind of to hear your thoughts about what makes a space or a classroom more generally welcoming or not welcoming to people of color.
Are the students, do they feel seen? Do they feel heard? Can they see themselves in the curriculum? And you know, the only way you're gonna find that out is to do what? Ask them. I always have something called open curriculum, and there's, you know, students on here that have, you know, taken my classes, where, you know, I try to do my best to have a multiple views, different scholars that write about, you know, what I study or whatever the class is. But I always try to have a week where there's what I call just open curriculum. So students can bring what they want, you know, to share. And we, you know, read those things or whatever. But I think it's important for people to feel seen and heard. And those of you that have been in my classes know that I set norms. We co-construct norms in our class, in my classes, so that students can take ownership. Now, the only thing I direct is I tell them we'll need more than 5. So we go through this process of having people share, and then we basically engage in analysis and kind of say, okay, this one kind of fits this one, and we get agreement. It's kind of a long process, but it's worth it because students across the semester, I always get evaluation, like, you know, I always get great evaluations where students are saying, wow, you know, Dr. Joseph really cares about the students. She cared about me. I got a note from a student that graduated 2 years ago, like 2 weeks ago, and said, I just want to tell you about the impact that you made on my life. You had no idea what I was going through personally, right? But because you allowed me some flexibility around the assignments, you asked me how I was doing, you know, the students, you know, that she just felt cared about. And it doesn't take long to just ask people, how are you doing? You know? So I think that makes for a welcoming classroom. But if you don't never look my way, or you don't ever, you know, ask me how I'm doing, or even call on me, I would think that someone might not feel, you know, welcomed in that classroom.
That's really helpful. Do you have any advice about what that can look like when you're not the person running? I'm not the person that sets the norms. I'm not the person that sets what we do. I'm just like in the space with people. And if there's things you can do to support your peers when you're maybe not, I'm not the teacher in front of the classroom that gets to like make those decisions as amazing as they sound.
So Bethany, are you like, is it your practicum or whatever? So you're like
I'm actually not in teaching. I'm in the psychology PhD program. So I'm on my way to possibly being a TA, an advisor in meetings, in committees type environments. So right now I'm a 3rd year, so I'm not the person that sets those norms, but I want to be more aware of what those norms are and like more aware of how I can do things when I'm not the one in charge. Does that make sense?
So yeah, there's again a body of research literature around norming. You could look up Courageous Conversations. Glenn Singleton, those norms are really around like how to have conversations around race. But you could also just, you know, Google like what are norms in classroom discussions, and they'll give you some more information. But I have raised my hand in other meetings that have started and there were no norms, and just said, I'm wondering if I can say something. That's going to take a lot of courage. It's going to take a lot of courage because I don't know if someone will be offended by what I'm saying, or so like I put that out there first. And of course, what people are like, oh my God, yes, say what you want to say, you know, so you gotta have to like play some little psychology, right? But it does take courage. And then I would say, you know, I'm wondering about if we have time to set some norms. And I think norms are important because it allows us as a learning community to engage in self-reflection. And, sometimes some of the things that we might talk about might be kind of hard. And, we want everybody to feel like respected, you know what I mean? Like kind of like that. And I'm not saying that they'll be like, okay, Bethany, you're right, let's do it right then. But maybe they might think about, so for the next meeting or, the next class or whatever, they might even invite you to participate and help doing that. But I could see how if you're not the person in charge, how that could be difficult. So that's why I'm saying position it as like an inquiry kind of question, right? And then hopefully, that can happen because sometimes it's just out of your control.
So I think we also have some questions about specifically STEM and how we can nurture and promote equity and access to STEM early on, even in preschool and primary school. And then a second one about how to support students who want to pursue STEM majors but are normally discouraged from doing this.
Yeah, so I remember having my teaching practicum, and my practicum was for 6 through 12 mathematics was my endorsement or whatever you call that thing. But I had to do a primary practicum. So I was literally kicking my feet like a 2-year-old as they were dragging me to be in a first grade class. So I know first grade is it was K/1. So I know maybe you're talking about even younger, but one of the examples that I had there is exposure and lots of questions and lots of integrating mathematical ideas into the day. So you guys know that, preschool, it's like an integrated day. When I learned how to do units around like a question, oh my God, like my life just, it was lovely because I could take an idea and map it through like the story that we were going to read. And maybe the story that we were going to read had some like math ideas that then I would bring to like the math when we would, begin to teach the math, right? So integrating across the whole day, I think is important to help kids understand the value of mathematics beyond math time or beyond school, right? And so I think early exposure is really important. And just, me and my daughter used to be in the car and, I would just ask her to like count the lights, on the way home. Like, how many lights did we go through? And she's like 3. And so, the more integrated, the more normal, these things become for kids. And it's not such a shocker, right, when they get ready to go to school. And so I think that early exposure is really important. Now, let me tell you, I took my first graders to a bank, a federal bank. These 5 and 6-year-olds were in a bank. They went into the vault. We were doing like a unit on money, okay? And they went into the vault and, talked to the man, at the bank. And I had helped them develop some questions that they could ask. And I have evidence. I have my portfolio here, if nobody believes me. But I had the kids reading the New York Stock Exchange. So I chose stocks that they would recognize. Hershey, Kiss, Hershey, Kmart, things that they would recognize, right? And they had a little sheet on the top of their desk every morning. They would have to look up. They knew how to find, their stocks. So they knew how to find H because we talked about how to do this. All they had to do was look for, they didn't know anything about fractions, of course, right? Not in that way. So all they had to do was look for a minus or, a plus. So if they got a minus, they had to do a frown face and they knew that they had lost money that day, right? And if they saw like a plus fraction or whatever, then they got to put a smiley face. If nothing changed from day to day, then it was just like a straight face. So did kids walk away understanding like the depth of what does it mean to, purchase stocks and do all that stuff? No, but it was still my choice to help them kind of understand some very rudimentary ideas of what it means to, have money and buy pieces of a company or whatever. And I just always had the standard way up above, what my, Washington State standards told me to do. And, I just think exposing them and teaching them more mathematics is really important. And lots of good questions.
And we are coming right on time, but wonder if you want to answer this last question from Janessa about, as a Black woman, how do you balance speaking truth to power regarding racist practices and making your message palatable for white audience? I have a fear of retaliation as I seek to move the needle forward.
Where's Janessa? Wave your hand. Oh, there you go. Hey, Janessa.
Hi, Dr. Joseph.
This is like a really good question. So, and it's okay if it's okay for me if I go over a little bit, Hasina.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is a really good question because I think it comes with maturity and deeply understanding the issues and sort of making strategic moves about what to do in the moment. So I pretty much have 3 responses. One response is, I want to make this a teachable moment with this white individual, and I want to like follow up and actually have a conversation. Generally, that will happen if I'm vested at all in maybe who the person is. My second response is, I'm just going to walk away because I want self-care to be the foregrounded in that moment, and you don't deserve me at all. You don't deserve my response. You don't deserve my presence, nothing. So I just turn around and walk away. And I turn around and walk away with a smile because I just saved myself from taking high blood pressure medicine, right? And then I think the third response for me is that sometimes I just got to go off and blast somebody, right? That's like rare. And you guys know what I mean when I say go off and blast somebody? Everybody know what I mean by that? That could mean a cussing out. That could mean, just highly emotionally charged response. That's really rare, but it is still an option because some people just are really, ignorant, right? But that's not one that I gauge. Generally, because I'm an educator, it's just in me. I try to make things a teachable moment. But then I might have to go get some ice cream, or I might have to, go for a walk or whatever to sort of like reclaim my energy that I just gave to someone who, just made some kind of ignorant comment or has like a crazy perspective, So you got to make a choice, Janessa, because people don't deserve a response every single time. And the challenges are so crazy and so frequent. We'll end up in a sane asylum if we respond to everything. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Do you mind at some point I have a follow-up conversation with you?
Yes, absolutely. You can call me.
Thank you.
You know me.
Well, thank you so much for all of you for being here, and for Nicole Joseph for answering all of our questions. And I would love Nicole
I have to say, I don't like hot chicken. Let me just be honest. I did go to Prince and I did go to Hattie B's when I first moved here 4 years ago. And both of them were just way too greasy for me. And I love spicy food, but it was just too greasy. And
have you tried hot fish?
Mm-mm.
You should try it. It's a less greasy, less hot option.
Okay.
Really good.
Okay, I will try it. All right, that's all I want to say about that.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us. Rich Milner will be with us next week. So we hope you guys can join us and be part of that conversation. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And anyone can feel free to follow up with me if you had a question that you didn't get answered or that you didn't, maybe want to say in front of everybody. You're welcome to send me an email. Nadav, I know I miss you too. Oh, where are the babies? Is he gone? Oh, no. Where are the babies, Nadav?
For now, we still have daycare. I suspect it wouldn't last for long. But for now, we still have daycare. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. You can probably still get some work done. All right. Well, Hasina, you're so awesome. You've just brought like a life, I think, to our EDI efforts and initiatives, and I just really appreciate how collaborative you are, and your reimagination and how you listen to the students. And
our students have great ideas, right? Our students really know what they're talking about. So
yeah, they really, really do. And but I just appreciate your approach and how you've taken up this, the EDI work. So thank you again.
Thank you. And I really would love to hear about the session you and Luis are doing. So I might email you to get information about
about the Bettina Love thing.
Yes.
Okay, absolutely. Bye, everybody.
Bye.